For about 13 years, I've done Jump Rope for Heart. And I've done it because I get a gift certificate to buy equipment for my students. I get less money every year, but I get more students every year. So I have to go some way, come up with equipment for my kids. And it gets used and it gets broken. And I don't have a choice, but I have to go to outside sources. My art teacher last year did hot dogs for Santa. She went to the community, she asked for everything she possibly could that would be free, and she used the money to go and buy clay for our school, because there is no money for clay. My son, Joel, got a wonderful education through Charles County Public Schools because he had teachers who fought for him because they wanted him to be successful. And every teacher that I know is like that. They will do whatever it takes to make sure that their children are successful.
The most significant way that this has affected our schools in Charles County is the class size. The school where I teach was built for 1,600, and we now have somewhere around 2,200 students in the class, in our school. What that means is that we have mobile classrooms, and we have 16 floating teachers who do not have a classroom of their own, and we have huge class sizes. My largest class size last year was 33 students in a beginning world language class, which is extremely ineffective. No matter how engaging my lessons are, it's really hard within our time constraints to let every student be able to speak, be able to participate in that size of a class. And most of my classes begin at the size of 26 and they go rapidly upward. It's really hard for students to succeed when they cannot engage themselves in the lesson because so many other people are in the classroom. For myself, as well as many other teachers who don't have the access to their classrooms during their planning time, their resources are not at hand. It is harder to plan lessons that are engaging to the students. And it's also hard on the teachers that are floating into your rooms because everything that they have to have for their lessons are on a cart. And if they don't have something, they can't just reach over into their cabinet or their bookshelf and get it. And that affects their students as well because their students are not able to succeed at as high of a rate as we would like them to.
Well, I have a colleague who is looking into retiring. She has sent away her information, and her concern is that without the raise that we have not received a raise in several years, the senior teachers, no cost of living, anything like that. So it's going to be very difficult for her to retire on a living wage. This year, we are very fortunate that our younger teachers, in order to try to compress the work scale and move them up to speed a little more quickly, they have been given a small cost of living. Senior teachers will be given $1,000 in November, which will not count toward their retirement. And as you know, your retirement is based on your years of service and your salaries. So therefore, that extra $1,000, which of course will then be taxed at least a 28% tax rate, really comes down to a very small Christmas bonus, which I'm sure everyone will be thrilled to receive. But as I said, it will not help anyone who is really looking at retirement in the near future, as it won't count toward their salary. It is interesting. Every year you are given a certain amount of money to spend on your children. And you buy things like construction paper and crayons and scissors and glue, and you have to replace the puzzles that disappear over the years and are eaten or destroyed. Things that the children actually use every day and that we put in their hands. Of course, materials of instruction come through a different pot of money from our school system. But each teacher is given a small amount of money to spend within certain parameters. Well, this year, when I got my money, it was $100 that I could spend. And of course, you don't physically get the money. You are told this is where you're allowed to order from and this is what you may order. I looked back at some old records, and when I first started teaching many years ago, my very first year, I was given $75. Now, through the years, as money was a little more available and people were able to spend money more equitably on education, I remember a couple years having $200 to spend in the classroom. That was great. I could replace a lot of broken things that way. But $100 this year, when you look at the cost of buying a ream of just construction paper, that could be as much as $2.25, depending on the size of paper that you buy. A box of crayons can be 49 cents, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, except that you're buying a lot of crayons during the kindergarten school year. If you want to replace a puzzle, those are $18 to $25 a piece. It doesn't take long for $100 to disappear.
And the way that's affected us as a school system is that what they've really done to keep that and to actually fund a little bit of increase for some of our people is to go through and get rid of redundant positions, to not fill positions, to cut supplies, to cut just wherever they can. It's not uncommon in our county to put in a request for something and to have that request denied because the funds just aren't available. Now, because of the cutting that they're doing, this year we have a county mandated reading system, and part of that reading system is workbooks. We did not receive enough workbooks for all of the first graders to use, which meant that as a classroom teacher I had to supplement, and I've got enough experience in things to do that I can supplement. So I was able to do that, but then the other part is that most of that stuff needs to be Xerox. I've been set at a 2,000 copies per month Xerox limit, which runs out very quickly when you're running off 3 or 4 worksheets for children to do, or centers, or anything like that. The biggest heart-wrenching moment for me is when I have a kid that comes up to me and says that they're hungry. And when I ask why, they don't want to tell you, and then you find out that the family's unemployed, and their family's too proud to apply for help. We're seeing a lot more kids coming to school without supplies. They're coming without, the usuals, the backpacks, the lunch boxes. My school does a voluntary uniform program, and the kids are having a hard time doing those. I mean, we had instituted a program where parents that the kids have outgrown the uniforms could bring them to school and trade them around. Due to some changes in personnel, we no longer are allowed to do that because somebody's made a decision that that's not acceptable. I find in these economic times that you've got to do whatever you can to make it work, and I think teachers are really proficient at that. Teachers really do a good job with that. But even teachers are being stretched to their limits because they've run out of tricks. The tricks that we used to have. It's hard to go to somebody in the business community, plead your case, when you know that same business person who has always helped you out is facing the same same economic downturn you are. They don't have people come in buying like they used to, so they don't have the extra to throw you away and use it as a business write-off. I mean, it really is a vicious cycle, and there's really no way to stop it. We see some signs of it. People that I used to go to that say, if you've got this, if you've got that, we could use it in the classroom. They don't have it anymore, so the business world, although they want to help and they understand our cause, really can't do that anymore. Another impact that I really see a big effect in is people coming into teaching. This year when our county went recruiting, they had a really hard time. I mean, they had to go to several states. And one of the biggest serious hits are in males. When you've got a job like education or a job like teacher, and it doesn't pay that much to start with, and when you look at how slowly it takes to get up to any kind of decent money, you're not going to get people involved. And males especially if they're the head of the household, they can't afford to become a teacher because they can't afford to raise a family, they can't afford to start a mortgage, they can't do it. So when people really out there, when Mr. Congressman and Mr. Senator want to know why we don't have males in education, they ought to look at what they're paying teachers. They ought to understand that if you want somebody to raise a family, buy a house, commit to the American dream, you need to start supporting that American dream, and you need to invest in that American dream. You need to pay teachers what they're really worth.